Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Jesse Montano here, Gorilla Sports Off Ice. Going to be joined by Meghan Angley in just a moment. Wanted to remind you guys about our good friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Go to trustedamerican.com right now. They want to help you guys lower your interest rate and get a better monthly payment. Go to trustedamerican.com to see how much money they can help you start saving right now today. Hello and welcome in.
Do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Yes. Hey, welcome in. How's it going? Sorry, mid-sentence there. We were talking about our show from Friday. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley, Gorilla Sports Off Ice. Kicking off the week here, Megan. It's supposed to be a beautiful week weather-wise. A little overcast today, but that's all right. I'm here for it. How the heck are you?
I'm doing really good. My mom is here, and
Yeah, she is.
I love her, and I want to make her proud, so I'm a little nervous.
I've known her. Well, I've known of your mom. You and I have talked about your family for years, but I met your mom for about 4.5 minutes, and I also love her. So I also want to make her proud. Megan, I was gone last week. You and I touched base several times. We had the show on Friday, but it was a 3-game trip, so we're going to get into a little bit of that today. And then we had some good conversations today at practice in the locker room about kind of a range of things. Gabe Landeskog was back out there again today. You were up at Eagles for the Pot of Gold game over the weekend, so we're going to get into all of that. I guess just first and foremost, yeah, how are things? How was the last week? How was just in general? How's it going?
Really great, because we have a lot of cool things in the works behind the scenes over here at Gorilla Sports. And so it's been a busy past week with some of that. And I'm excited to finally share with everybody some of the stuff we've been working on. There's 2 things I'm thinking of that I'm teasing in that sentence. And the Eagles stuff has certainly been fun. It was a huge weekend with Pot of Gold up in Loveland, and they raised $147,000 for the Mellon family. I think it's incredible. Some of the corporate sponsors made huge donations. The fans made huge donations. The auction was successful. Just an incredible night. And the Eagles pulled out a big win. It just was euphoric, the high of everything in the events from Pot of Gold. So that was really cool and special to be a part of.
And you got to do the on-ice interview there at the end of the game with Chris Wagner, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So no, it's great. We really loved being able to be involved with the Eagles this year, and hopefully that's a fun little partnership that we get to continue
They
building.
gave us really cool access too to get an even closer look with Ruben on the camera into some of the behind the scenes of Pot of Gold. And so he got to go into the locker room after the game, and the family was there to sort of receive the moment afterwards. And it was so cool. Like, I didn't get to be there for that, but just that access is incredible, especially for such a special moment for the Mellon family.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you remember, but I was lucky enough to be up in Edmonton last year when Dog Nation was doing their big thing for the Humboldt family and the family that, in Edmonton, and that stuff is really special to get to be a part of and get to see up close. So that's awesome that you got to be there, for that night and all of that. We're going to talk more about Pot of Gold. We're going to talk a little bit about Eagles as well a little bit later, because
they're cooking.
They are cooking right now, and they're looking like a potentially exciting group. And, we've had some interesting conversations with them throughout this season about the success they've had. So we'll talk about that, but let's just start with, I know we talked on Friday after Toronto and Ottawa, but the Avs then go into Montreal and have a really interesting game there where they're up 3-0 and then 4-1 at separate times. And Montreal stages a comeback and ends up going all the way to a shootout. The Avs are able to pull out a win. And right now, we've had this conversation from the other perspective on nights where they've played well and haven't gotten the results. We talked about it with Jared Bednar, where this time of year, the results are all that matters. Well, yeah, it sucks that you had a little bit of a scare, but Eastern Conference opponent, you don't mind giving up the point to them. You get 2 points out of it. That's really all that matters. Avs go 2-1 on the road trip. The one being a really weird game. What did you make of the 3-game swing against, as Jared Bednar pointed out today, a couple desperate teams, and then a team that is like them trying to climb in the standings?
I think given the strangeness of the circumstance in the Toronto game, it's the best possible outcome, because that was something that was out of their control. And I guess the only way it could have been controllable is if they'd scored a few more goals in that game. Yeah. But Toronto had a say in it too. And so I'm really pleased with the overall, not just the outcome, but the performance inside each game. I even look at the Montreal game with a little bit of a critical lens with how it finishes, but they still get the result in the end. And I think those are important learning lessons for them to work out in season. And so it's not so different from how I felt about the unraveling in the Dallas game here at home. Again, they still pull out the win in the end, which is important. And I don't doubt that the learning lessons too of, okay, how did we let this game slip from our grasp, even for just a matter of seconds, a couple of shifts, right? That's all it takes in this league. The margin for error is so thin. And I think it's important for the Avs to be working through that right now, because that margin for error is even thinner in a 7-game series. So I like that they're still getting the result in the win column, but also learning some lessons about things that they want to do better. And this homestand coming up is a great launch pad for some of that to just be executed, because this team looks more and more dangerous every game, because I'm seeing pieces coming together to include inside the top 6, where it's been injected with so much talent post deadline. I think we're starting to see how some of these options are paying off in a big way. And Brock Nelson coming into his own feels like a big storyline coming out of this road trip.
Yeah. And I want to we talked to a few different people about that second line today at practice. And so I want to get into that, in Brock Nelson in particular. But, you likened the Montreal game to the Dallas game from 2 Sundays ago. Sunday? It was Sunday. 2 Sundays ago. 2 Sundays ago, where they, it felt like the Avs were really in control, and then quickly things shifted. And it was really the same story in Montreal, where the Avs were in control of the game. They had just made it 4-1.
Right.
Felt like you were kind of in cruise control to the finish. And then it was just like Dallas, 2 quick goals within 60 to 90 seconds of each other. In the Dallas game, that tied it up. In the Montreal game, that brought it to within 1. The building comes back to life. And that's a loud building. That's a passionate fan base to allow back into a game like that. And the part that I look at it, you're talking about the margin for error. Not only do the Avs find ways to win both of those games in overtime, but I like the fact that in both, the other team was allowed to come back in and get the game tied, but the Avs were able to kind of stop the bleeding and push back and get back on their toes and not end both those games just getting caved in, having to hold on just to survive the period. No, the leads disappeared. You find yourself in a tie game. It's been a group that's been able to be mature, stop, reset, get back on the attack, and, turn it into a situation where the momentum isn't just gushing going against them, and being able to settle back into a game and play and find results in both. That to me is the part that, you're going to go through momentum swings. We think back to that series last year in Winnipeg. That was a tough building to be in. And, there were times it felt like, especially in the early part of that series and then against Dallas, where things would start to run and the Avs just couldn't stop it. The momentum got to be too much. I like the fact that we've seen them push back on that twice in the last 2 weeks.
And you've mentioned this a couple times, but the wins happen in different ways too in evaluating a couple of these games. And so earlier in the season, the Avs were a team that could turn it on in a comeback effort when they needed to, from a place of desperation. And this is a little bit different, a source of motivation for them when they previously had the game in their grasp and need to rein it back in. And so I think it says a lot about the maturity of this group, that they can sort of command that extra effort at will, no matter the circumstance. And that reminds me of the 2022 team. I know at the end of that year, because they had already clinched, the top spot in the division and the West, they kind of coasted into that postseason, and people were a little bit worried. Can they turn this on again? And their ability to do it game 1 of the playoffs, they go and they sweep the Nashville Predators, absolutely answered that question. And it's easy to say in hindsight, that was just sort of the path to the cup the rest of the way. It was a dominant effort. It was hard fought. And it answered that question of, can this team turn it on when they need to?
Yeah.
And I think these types of games help to reinstill that part of their identity.
Well, and within that run that you're talking about, you have game 5 against St. Louis and game 5 against Tampa that were both big moments that felt like things could have changed. The series could have shifted. It could have started to get away from the Avs if they would have gotten too caught up in those moments. But so it's these types of little pockets of moments that you see because you don't have the benefit of playing a series against teams in the regular season. It's these kinds of moments that, you sit there and you can say, all right, this group has the maturity to not let things get so far out of their control that they can't bounce back from it. Hey, yeah, we made some mistakes. Cale Makar told us after the game on Saturday. Yep, we took our foot off the gas for 30 seconds and it cost us. And that's a good lesson for this group to come right now and not in the playoffs, because you don't, even when you feel like you're in control and you're up 4-1, there's 10 minutes left. Yeah, you can't stop playing for even a second because it'll cost you. So I'm with you. It's nice to see them being able to learn these lessons and handle them and come out the other side of them.
It's good source material. Like, there is a game in a future playoff series where in a locker room in intermission, they can say to each other, do you remember that moment in the Dallas game?
Mm-hmm.
And then how we answered for it in overtime, for example. And so I think drawing upon some of these mistakes from the regular season will prove very fruitful for them in the playoffs.
Yeah. Hey, we've been here before. Nothing new.
Exactly.
Well, part of that veteran experience, and I think what has led to more maturity, is the guy that you mentioned a minute ago, Brock Nelson. Suddenly making 3 goals in 2 games. Points all over the place. Other than that, beautiful pass from him to Ryan Lindgren to set up a goal. Not only does he look more comfortable, Jared Bednar, and I want to talk about the line experimenting in a second, but Jared Bednar has him with Marty Necas and Arturi Lehkonen. And I told you today at practice, because now you've got Val, Nate, and Jonathan Drouin. And I said, I don't know. Suddenly those lines feel a lot more complete to me. Those feel like, that feels like a really dangerous 1-2 punch. Guys seem a little more comfortable, and it's driving results right now. So while they have moved Marty Necas away from Nathan MacKinnon, seems like Jared maybe found something here.
Yeah, it does feel extremely dangerous. I like that Necas and MacKinnon had an opportunity to play together, and I don't think it's the last we've seen of that combination. Yeah. It just feels like options have opened for Jared Bednar. I think that it was important for Necas to get brought into the fold, playing alongside the player with the best habits on the team. And so I think that drive to compete from MacKinnon is so important to play alongside. You just feel the intensity differently in that way. And so Nichushkin with a MacKinnon is just an insanely threatening top line. And I think Necas, with his speed and his ability to control entries and establish then the zone with Brock Nelson and a Lehkonen, who's the workhorse, who's going to retrieve pucks like it's nobody's business. It just kind of rounds out that line. Yeah. Not that, with Drouin there or Nichushkin there, it was so different. It's just, it feels like the wealth is being distributed very evenly inside the top 6 this way. And I feel Brock Nelson is very versatile, so I wasn't ever worried, even when it was Drouin and Nichushkin playing alongside him. I feel like Necas with his speed can add something a little bit different to that line that will make them more of a threat than they were previously.
Well, I look at it as, when I'm using the old NHL video game, line builder mentality of trying to get the right balance, you get the score at the end. On that top line, Drouin is your distributor, even though Nathan MacKinnon is a premier playmaker in this league.
He's selfish. I don't know if you knew that. For Nations.
According to a lot of Edmonton fans, Nathan MacKinnon's the most selfish player in the league. Jonathan Drouin's your distributor. Nathan MacKinnon is kind of your de facto shooter on that line. And then you have Val Nichushkin, I'll use workhorse as, the word they use.
With a lot of power behind it.
Right. And can play on the wall and is just a forechecking nightmare, can retrieve pucks for you. So, okay, that's how that top group shakes out. And then for that second unit, okay, well, you've got your workhorse in Arturi Lehkonen. You've got your playmaker in Marty Necas, and then you've got your shooter in Brock Nelson. It's the same type of makeup on each of the top two lines, just with different personnel plugged in. And, both Marty Necas and Nathan MacKinnon can kind of be that dual threat. But I thought there was something interesting. You mentioned the zone entries that Jared Bednar mentioned today about what he likes so much about Marty Necas is he's another player who does not have to check the puck all the way back to their own zone and fully kind of restart a breakout. He can do kind of a quick reset in the neutral zone and then get back going north, get the puck into the zone. And then you have Arturi Lehkonen who can go to work, retrieving it below the goal line, things like that. It just gives you, I had someone tell me, I believe it was in Montreal, a Canadian media person that just said, man, they get up the ice so quick. They just get up the ice so quick. And if you have Nathan MacKinnon and Marty Necas doing that, kind of being able to reload there in the neutral zone and get back on the attack for each of those top two lines, that just becomes really difficult to match up against and defend.
It becomes very difficult to defend because I think in earlier parts of this season, a lot of teams have an answer for Colorado's speed if it's too concentrated at just the top.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll specifically then cover the Nathan MacKinnons and the Cale Makars if he's quarterbacking the power play, for example. And so it led to stagnancy on the power play, 5v5 scoring. And that's where you mentioned both MacKinnon and Necas do this thing well. So why not redistribute the wealth a little bit and then just make now two lines at the top of the lineup incredibly dangerous to play against? Because Lehkonen, being the player that also retrieves pucks, he's pretty nifty and he can find seams from below the goal line that just add to the playmaking aspect. And that's going to support a player like Necas, who now working with MacKinnon has gotten accustomed to rotating as needed. And so I think there's so much compatibility within this second line too, that I'm excited for the threat that they're going to pose. Everybody looks at Nathan MacKinnon in that line and kind of feels like the Avs are top heavy. They are a one-line team. And I think that's a conversation that stays at the beginning of this season because I think it has entirely changed. I think this is so much more a well-balanced attack, and it's going to be really dangerous from the top six altogether.
Well, it's more, I was just about to say, it's more well-balanced. I talked about Arturi Lehkonen. He's the workhorse on that line. He's also almost got 30 goals this season. So you even on that top unit, you really can't. I don't know if because of everything that's happened the last couple of seasons, everyone here in Colorado, we understand how good Val Nichushkin is. But it's one of my favorite parts about getting the opportunity to talk to media that isn't from Colorado is to talk to them about Val Nichushkin. And when they get to see him up close in the power and the speed and the hands, I still think, I don't necessarily want to use the word underrated, but I still think this is a guy that we maybe don't give enough credit to for being the threat that he is out there. Like, I'm not trying to go backwards to the Mikko Rantanen conversation, but there were several times over the last two seasons where Val Nichushkin would find himself, really on a roll and hot. And I'd be sitting here and I'd be talking with JJ and I'd be like, are we sure it's not Nate, Cale, and then Val? Like when they're all at their best, like, are we sure about that? And again, I'm not trying to litigate any type of Mikko Rantanen conversation, but like having him playing alongside of Nathan MacKinnon just makes that line so much more dynamic and so much more of a threat. And then to have that second unit, it's just so much more well balanced. And I just wanted to drive that point home that you were making of like the not only can those lines be an offensive threat, you're so responsible with Brock Nelson and Arturi Lehkonen on one unit, Nathan MacKinnon and Val Nichushkin on another unit. Nathan MacKinnon doesn't get anywhere near enough credit for being a 200-foot player that he deserves.
Yeah.
And then you get into the bottom half of that lineup, and it's just nothing but responsible, rock solid type players. This is just going to be a really difficult team to play against, if they're playing at their best.
I remember being in the Dallas locker room when they were back here and they lost in overtime. And
the Stars. lost in overtime.
Yes. Dallas.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the Dallas room asking them what made it so hard to create offensive chances. And it was how smart the Avs played in their own end, line by line. It didn't matter who was defending the house. It was hard to create anything with how well the Avs defended. And I think this team, in a Bednar system, it's tough. It's very structured. And when you stray from it is when it costs them. And so I think we've seen that result where maybe they do have a lapse for a single shift and they have to pay for it in a big way. But when they are playing inside that structure, it works for a reason and it requires a lot of buy-in. But when they're bought in, it's very hard to create anything. And then you've got excellent goaltending that just makes it really hard to put goals past this team. I think the Nichushkin conversation is an important one. We've all seen the record of this team with him in the lineup. It's not insignificant. It's not just a coincidence. And I actually think, too, in talking about what MacKinnon and Necas did kind of similarly, you could kind of make the same case for Nelson and Nichushkin in what they do as net front players. I think that's another reason why having Nichushkin on that top line, Nelson on the second, I think I see Brock Nelson leaning into that net front role and being a screen in the same way that Nichushkin can do that on any line. That I'm really buying into this idea that they're just sharing the wealth now with how this top six is constructed.
Well, and as much as we've seen Arturi Lehkonen work well next to Nathan MacKinnon, you've still got him next to Marty Necas, who stylistically is a very similar player to the way that Nate likes to play offensively. So I mean, I really do. I think you went from, and I mean, look, we even talked about it in here on this show at points this season. Like, I don't know, is this a top heavy team? Is this a one line team again?
Absolutely.
Chris McFarland, after he traded Mikko Rantanen, said we were too top heavy.
We needed depth.
We didn't have the depth. And that's just not the case anymore, assuming health and that Val can stay in the lineup. I hate to have to give that caveat, but it's 2 years in a row, you've got to, we've got to be honest with that part of the conversation. Assuming health and everyone's in the lineup, Chris McFarland did a hell of a job putting this forward core together when the dust settled.
This is where, too, behind this top six, I'm excited. It feels like the engine has just started for that third line with Charlie Coyle. And I loved the conversation with Bednar today about how Ross Colton's game has improved over this last stretch. And he immediately points to the addition of Charlie Coyle. That was a huge need I identified around trade deadline. And any trade deadline target was get Ross Colton some help.
Yeah.
And I mean, I specifically liked Charlie Coyle for a reason. And so I also think that's a line to keep an eye on, especially Coyle and Colton and what they can create together, because they're both such energy players that I think that's going to become a ball of energy that's very hard to contain in a playoff series.
Well, it's okay. So the top line, you've got Val Nichushkin, who I have for the last number of years looked at him and just said, as a player on the ice, I cannot even imagine what a nightmare that is to play against.
Yeah.
He's faster than you. He's bigger than you. He's got a longer reach than you. And his motor just does not stop.
Right.
Like he's just, who was it against Montreal? It was Newhook. It was Alex Newhook, where Newhook tried 3 separate times, just like he was trying to break out of his own zone. And Val was all over him, and 3 separate times Newhook curled towards the wall, just trying to escape from pressure, thinking, okay, well, I need to just ditch him here and he'll peel off and I'll be, and he just could not shake him. And finally Val just caught him and overtook him and just peeled the puck off him like it was nothing. Like Alex Newhook, good skater, fast skater, shifty guy, could not escape Val Nichushkin. Okay. So that's on your top unit. Then you got Arturi Lehkonen, who is just Val Nichushkin light, just a little bit shorter, but he's the same type of just Energizer bunny. And then you have that third line. That's Yoel Kiviranta, Charlie Coyle, Ross Colton. Like just pests, just tough to play against. Okay, so you survive that. Whew, catch our breath a little bit. Against Parker Kelly and Logan O'Connor. And it's just like, yeah, they've built a roster here up front that just does not give you any time to breathe, with the effort and the work ethic, and the way that those players like to play. And then I thought what Sam Malinski said to us today when you asked him about Ryan Lindgren was really interesting, of just smart guy, doesn't make mistakes, always in the right spot. I think we maybe even undersold how good it was going to be for Ryan Lindgren to be a little bit more appropriately cast in a role here.
Some of our Pucks and Prosecco conversation for tomorrow is going around the league, and we're going to look at some of the comments out of New York recently, because I remember very clearly how a lot of us reacted on the heels of the Lindgren trade. And a lot of Avs fans felt we were on the wrong end of this trade. This is a disaster. He's been terrible analytically, on the decline for the last 2 seasons. What are we doing here? That is a New York locker room, not in mourning strictly over Ryan Lindgren, but the vibes are very bad. And players have said, if we played better, Ryan Lindgren would probably still be here. Mm-hmm. And so there is absolutely a different value that New York had for Lindgren there, even being maybe overused, or, his deployment was just a role too high for him there. They still understood the value of this player because he's a warrior and he's going to battle for you every night. And more appropriately cast, like you're mentioning, he's a great defender. And I still see the way in which analytically he's just probably never going to pop. It's just the stay-at-home defenseman is not going to look great when the numbers seem to favor possession players, just kind of generally. It's really hard unless you get into more advanced analytics. And that's where I can accept that about Lindgren, as long as he continues to provide exactly what he has been.
Well, and I mean, it just felt like such a bad, lazy take to just look at the analytic numbers and be like, oh, he sucks. Oh, he's worse than Calvin DeHaan, which were some of the takes that we were seeing out there. And it was like, yeah, his chart doesn't look as good, but it just completely disregarded any matchups, injuries, how the team is playing, what's going on with that team. And again, like I haven't seen a card on Ryan Lindgren for like just his time in Colorado. I imagine those numbers look a lot, like you said, they're probably not great. He's a stay-at-home defenseman. It's never going to pop, but they're probably better. And 2, like you said, he's providing exactly what is being asked. And wouldn't you know it? I'm just pulling it up here to make sure that wouldn't you know it? In 10 games, he's matched his goal output from the previous 54 in New York.
Just thinking about the points production being this unexpected thing he did not need to provide, but also has. Right. And that is partly opportunity, because with some of the injuries, he is in the second pair role pretty solidly and needing to eat up big minutes on the kill. So he's still being leaned on very heavily in Colorado. It was just crazy what was expected of him on a top pair with Fox. Just like stylistically, not really a great fit. The quality of competition is going to be higher.
The minutes.
The Rangers defensively on the whole have struggled this season. And so you have to look outside of the back end when a team is having that kind of trouble. It's a team-wide defense issue as well. So there's just a lot of things to take into account there.
Well, and so I was just, as a quick side note, his career high in goals for a season is 4. He's officially matched that this year with the 2 combined, but he's got 2 in 10 games with Colorado. Like, he's fitting in well. He's doing what you're asking of him on the back end. For the most part, have there been some, turnover here and there? Of course there has been. But he's activating offensively, and he seems like he's fitting in more comfortably. And I can't help but draw the parallel in my mind to, he's looked really good next to Sam Malinski these last few games. That's probably a little bit of a product of playing next to Adam Fox and knowing what it's like to have a partner who's wanting to activate a little bit more and be more involved defensively. Just Sam Malinski, go check out the interview we did with him today, sings Ryan Lindgren's praises, just doesn't make mistakes, smart first pass, always in the right spot. Thus far, I think Ryan Lindgren has been everything the Avs could have asked for out of an every night defenseman.
Blackwood also lucky, happy to have a guy like that defending in front of him. And I look at Manson, who, coming from Anaheim, I think you could maybe have guessed there was that puck skill ability in his toolkit, but coming to Colorado, it was like he was unchained. And so that side of his game came alive, but there was also a learning curve. I remember some highs and lows in Manson's early games with the Avs. And I think these are still 2 different players, but I wrote about this a little bit in a Jack Drury piece that's coming out, but the Avs don't just trade for players based upon what they've done in the past. There is an expectation that they can grow here and become more than we've seen previously. And so being better cast, I know it feels like maybe it's a demotion because Lindgren's utilization is lesser than it was in New York, but I still think you can get a better player out of it when they're used more appropriately. I think that's true of Manson. I think that's true of Nichushkin, of Drouin, of Lehkonen. There's a long list of players that have come here and have been better players here than they ever were before.
Well, what did Jared Bednar just tell us a couple of weeks ago? He's like, yeah, we don't ever trade for players to come here to be the player they were.
Yes.
It's come here and fit into, or we traded for you because we think that you plus our system equals more effective. And look, everyone has worked a job where they're not set up to be successful. And it doesn't matter how good you are at that job. It doesn't matter, if it's something you're passionate about, if it's something you've done in your life. If you're put in a situation where you're not set up to succeed, it's not going to go well.
Right.
And again, not that the Rangers had Ryan Lindgren in positions to not succeed. He had success there in the past, but it was like, okay, there's clearly something going on. You need to try something different. The Avs are trying something different, and they're putting him in scenarios to be successful. And that's why it's, it shouldn't be that surprising that he's finding success here. But yeah, I think there was just some of that knee jerk to the initial trade of like, man, this guy. But I mean, I think the way the Avs looked at it is cool. We just got a top pairing guy to plug in on our third pair.
Yeah.
Good for us.
Oh,
and that's how it's shaken out.
We need him on our second pair.
Right.
That's also fine.
That's fine. He was a top pairing guy before.
No, exactly.
We're good.
He can do that.
Right.
He can flex up or down.
And with the injuries kind of cropping up, it helps.
Let's give the people an injury update.
Yep, let's do it. Sam Girard was out on the ice twirling around a bit. And I was gonna say, I guess that sounded.
He does do that.
He does do that, right? That wasn't fully intentional, like what I meant there, but he was out working on his own. He was with Toby Peterson, the skills coach, getting in some work by himself. Skated for a while, but he was in red. Didn't participate in any team drills, team practice, anything like that. Only other injury update, Josh Manson, like we had talked about from last week, 3 to 4 weeks on Mance. Erik Johnson, not at practice today. Considered day-to-day. Jared Bednar even went as far to refer to today as a maintenance day for Erik Johnson, but he did say he did tweak something lower body in the game against Montreal. They'll see if he's good to go for tomorrow, but both Erik Johnson and Sam Girard considered day-to-day. So right now we are talking Sam Girard, Erik Johnson, Josh Manson, half of your D-core potentially missing tomorrow. Keaton Middleton drew back into the lineup, and Gabe Landeskog was taking defenseman reps today at practice.
New conspiracy theory. Gabriel Landeskog makes his return as a defenseman. They shelter his minutes on the bottom pair, put him by Keaton Middleton. He protects him.
Megan, someone is going to put this on Twitter. Someone's going to clip this and put this on Twitter.
You're right.
So you heard it here first. Meghan Angley announcing.
Gabe the defenseman.
Yeah. But hey, again, just going back to Ryan Lindgren. And then I did also want to just make mention of, you referred to Ryan Lindgren as a warrior. We've talked about Scott Wedgwood being a guy that the team can just rally behind a little bit. And I think Ryan Lindgren has a little bit of that effect too. But what I was going to say was, and here you are in a situation. Okay. So whatever, 10 days ago, we're like, wow, look at this group of 6 here on the back end. Well, you've lost 3 of them. The little bit rise here of Sam Malinski, and combined with your confidence in Ryan Lindgren, and you're not smashing the panic button.
Yeah. They can survive this, and not just, it's still an impressive way too, the way this team looks right now, even them just surviving these injuries. They are dangerous. I like to watch broadcasts from the away feed a lot of the time when they're on the road, and the other broadcasters think the Avs are a powerhouse at the moment. Everyone seems to be in agreement that the Avs post-deadline became something scary and dangerous to be worried about. And so I have felt that way, but it's nice to have it affirmed by somebody else outside of the Avs bubble. And it seems to be a current trend too, that the Avs are on notice around the league for what they've become.
Well, it's what's so funny, and you and I have talked about it before on this show, on past shows, of like when you're as a fan, if you're a fan of this team and you're watching them every day, and the great part of sports is the emotion and how invested you get in it. And when you're watching your team every day go through the highs and lows, the ups and downs, you can kind of ride that wave and you can feel like, oh, this is so up and down. It sucks. They're terrible. But when you step back, and I think you and I even did this right before the deadline, where we kind of went through like, all right, the Avs are being slammed here because they went through a not great 10-game stretch. So you and I took inventory on the last 10 games for all these other top teams that we had people saying like, oh, well, they'll never be able to compete with Winnipeg like this. They'll never be able to compete with Dallas like this. They'd never be able to go head-to-head with Edmonton like this. And we went through East and West top teams in the league, and all but like one or two of them who were in playoff positions had gone through a similar 10-game stretch. Where I'm going with this is, yeah, when you get outside of, like you said, that bubble, and you get perspectives from people who don't get to watch them every day, don't ride those highs and lows, I think you get a little bit more of a true sense of like, this is the perception of this group elsewhere. And there's a lot of other hockey markets and fan bases and organizations that are scared to play this Avalanche team right now, that do not like, we talk about from the Avs perspective, like, oh man, you're pulling Dallas. You think the Dallas Stars, who just went out and spent all that to bring in Mikko Rantanen, aren't sitting there going, are you fucking kidding me? We just did all this. We might have to end up playing the Avs in round one. Like, it's the same thing from other perspectives. And a lot of that is credit to the group that they've put together here, and the depth that they've been able to build, and the versatility that they've put on, it feels like, every line.
And there's an internal memo that is echoing this. You talk to Eric Johnson and he uses these words. Jack Drury used these words, that they feel they have something special here. And it's the perfect time of year for them to be rallying around that sentiment. I also feel they have something special there, but it's more important that that sense is growing and building around the Avs. And I think that this, final stretch here, what are we at? 11 games?
11 games to go.
Only 11 games to go.
Crazy.
I think we're just going to continue to see what that translates to on ice, that there is this growing sentiment that they have something special here.
Well, and not only that, but like, I really do think about, like, when we're going into this room now, it feels tighter than it did either of the last two seasons, and even at parts earlier this year. I don't know if you caught it. I think you were in there. I can't remember if this was because Megan and I were outstanding. We weren't in the media room today, and I got cold, so I went back in the media room. I don't remember if you had come back in yet. Parker Kelly tried a Michigan.
Yes.
At practice, and Jonathan Drouin and Nathan McKinnon were laughing at him and like giving him shit. And it was just funny because, Nate, I think we sometimes talk about him being too serious and intense, more so than he actually is. But like, just at practice, it was funny to see him kind of, he was laughing and like kind of literally hitting his knee, and like they were like
slapper.
Right. And just like giving Parker Kelly a hard time. And that's the one thing that I remember so much about the group from 2 years ago, that even though we weren't allowed in the room, or I guess 3 years ago by calendar year, we weren't in the room, because of all the COVID protocols and stuff. We were only getting players at the podium.
Yes.
But like, we were still seeing behind the scenes interactions, and the way that this group interacted with each other, and the way they talked about each other. And we'd hear guys like, I love this team. I love this group of guys. All I want to do is, play with this group of guys. And I feel like you're starting to get that. And I feel like that goes hand in hand with that sense of belief in something special, of just like, yeah, we were feeling that way because we're such a tight group. We're becoming such a tight group. And we just want to be around each other, and we just want to have each other's back. And I thought even what Keaton Middleton said in his speech a couple nights ago after getting the hat, he goes, well, I kind of got pumped in that fight, but I do it for any one of you guys. Let's get home. And, it's just, there's a mentality and a belief in each other that I think is starting to take hold in that locker room as well. And that's infectious. And that's something that you need, when we were talking about hey, you blow a 3-goal lead in the third period. You've got to believe in the guy sitting next to you that you can pull yourself out of it. There's good, talented teams all the time that crumble in those situations because there's a fraction in the locker room, or there's guys who don't get along, or and I'm using his name as the example. Nathan McKinnon doesn't think that the third line's any fucking good, so he doesn't want him out there. It's just, there's good teams that go through that type of stuff all the time. You need that sense of belief in the guy sitting next to you. It doesn't matter. We just gave up 3 goals. Jared can keep rolling all 4 lines because all 4 lines we trust are going to get this done for us. And it's the sense of trust and belief they have in each other even rears its head in the shootout.
I love this. I didn't want to derail from such a great segue because you're right. The trust matters. When you look at the stagnancy that crept into the power play earlier this year, it could be traced back to a lack of trust in each other and themselves in ways. But Nathan McKinnon dusting off the puck a little too much in search of an option that he feels comfortable with, and not eliminating options because he allowed time and space. That's exactly why the trust matters, because Nathan McKinnon and building trust with him by itself is so important. Like, you can almost link the success of the team on a given night to how much Nathan McKinnon trusts his teammates.
Right.
And when Chris McFarland says we needed depth, I think he's trying to alleviate some of the lack of trust that exists all throughout that lineup. And I think it does start at the top, and it starts with players at the top being able to advocate for themselves and what might be best for the team.
Well, and again, I remember Jared Bednar talking about in that cup year, and then Nazem Kadri talked about it the following season when he came back to Denver with Calgary, of the best teams, the truly elite teams, the teams that can contend for championships, or teams that coach themselves. And I remember Jared Bednar telling us that, on the cup run a couple of years ago, of it got to the point where very, very rarely, if ever, did after a game start, he even need to address the team.
Self-motivated.
Right. And not only self-motivated, but great at self-reflection and understanding what wasn't good enough, what they needed more of, what were the areas of concern, needing to push more, pull back, defend, whatever. That team understood what it needed as well as the coaching staff did. And, maybe we're getting a little bit carried away with setting up what we're talking about here, which is
fun,
which is Jonathan Drouin getting the tap on the shoulder to go shoot in Montreal, in his hometown, in front of friends and family, in front of the team that it didn't go well. And, it was his childhood team, and, the chance to be the hero, and it didn't work out. And he had a chance to go back in the Bell Center and go in and win the game for the Avalanche. And he said, I will. But Nelson's actually beat Montembeault a couple times with his shootout move, and I know what it is, and it's probably going to beat him. We should probably send Nelly out there. Selfless, doesn't get caught up in I get to be the hero. It's no, we need the 2 points, and I think Brock Nelson gives us a great chance to get 2 points here, coach. And it's trust in each other, and then it's trust from the coaching staff in its players.
I'm just so impressed by the hockey knowledge and nerdiness of Jonathan Drouin. And it's not, it's not exclusive to just him. I think this is why McKinnon and Drouin get along so well. But
it's something about Nate that I don't think people understand and appreciate enough.
Yeah.
They talk about him being like this, like intense, like almost kind of bully. It's like, no, he's just a nerd. He's just a hockey nerd.
Studies the game. It's why he only wants to talk about hockey. He doesn't want to do the silly social media questions. No. He just wants to talk about hockey. And I think that Jonathan Drouin, a forever student of the game, he's so cerebral. We see it in his playmaking ability and his vision on ice, but it extends beyond that. It's so impressive and fun that he utilized it in this situation to pinpoint not only knowing Montembeault's weaknesses as a goaltender, having played with him, but also Brock Nelson's skills in the shootout, knowing his move. This is a new addition to your team. You just watch so much hockey. I love it.
We don't have the Drouin clip queued up in here, do we? All right. Yeah. If you can, that'd be great. If not, no big deal. We'll see if Chloe can get it pulled. Cause I just laughed today because you could tell Drew was even not embarrassed, but he was just like, yeah, I'm a little bit of a nerd. So I knew what his move was.
He should wear that so proudly.
Yeah. Right. And it just made me laugh because you could tell that there was, an element to it of like,
I've been caught.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
None of you were supposed to know this.
Yeah. And then, you I think you said earlier, or maybe it was when you and I were talking before the show, of like him knowing Sam Montembeault's preference, like, shootout moves and go, like, that's less, but he played with Montembeault for multiple years. So like, that's one thing. But to your point, to be like, nope, I remember Brock Nelson beat him a couple times on that shootout move. I know what his move is. And if he comes here and I don't want to give too much away for the clip, because there was even something that he called out about what Brock Nelson does that gives goalies problems. Specifically, I knew it would give Montembeault problems. And I was just like, God damn, dude. Like, that was just, that was analysis beyond what I was expecting.
Instant, too.
Right.
The pressure of being tapped to go in the shootout and having all of that play in a matter of seconds to say, nope, defer to Nelson.
Mm-hmm. I'll go if he doesn't score. Like if this keeps going, I'll go next. But
yeah, he
can probably go win it.
The processing of it so instantly, it's all impressive, top to bottom. Like, I want my brain to work that way.
I know. Well, and what's so funny, Megan, is in high school, I probably could have done that. Like the level of like hockey dork that I was in high school and thereafter, like I probably could have done some of that stuff. But you get into this job and we get, our schedule is built around a certain team, and you just kind of lose that ability to know, every team off the top of your head, and you watching them every night and all that stuff. But for Jonathan Drouin to be as ingrained in the NHL as he is, and have his own stuff that he's going through,
playing 82 games of his own, more or less. I know there's injuries,
right? But having an 82 game schedule of his own that he's working through, his own team, to be that dialed in with what everyone else is doing, and like you said, just to be able to kind of recall it that quickly, I thought was great. So, we'll see if we can get it pulled. But if not, it's on Guerrilla Sports. Go check it out. It's a great interview, great chat with Jonathan Drouin. He sits in the dark dungeon corner of the locker room.
Yeah, he does.
But that's all right. He's always great to chat with. I love chatting with Drew.
He is one of the best to talk to. He's so patient and affirming of your question. He gives you this nod and acknowledgement in understanding what it is you're trying to ask, even if you don't ask it in the best way. I have so much appreciation for him.
I've said before, like I'll never forget when he first got here last year. A group of us, I think all of us, went over there to talk to him, and we got 4 minutes in, 4 or 5 minutes in, and we're like, all right, cool, awesome, thanks so much, Jonathan. Yeah, thank you. He goes, that's it. And he's used to Montreal media where you've got to answer 5 to 7 minutes of questions in English and then 8 to 10 minutes worth of questions in French. And there was a game early in the season last year that they had won, and I was the only one who walked over to him. He said, hey, do you mind if I chat with you? He's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, and he said, this is nothing. Like, I love this. Like, I only have to talk to one person after this game. So I think he's a product of someone who came from a really like hostile media environment. And so we're like, no, bro, we just want to talk to you. Like, we just want your perspective on stuff. Like, we're not here to grill you or beat you over the head over a mistake that you made. Like, we just want your perspective on these certain things. And I think he just has that mentality of like, well, I've been in much worse, so I'm happy to answer any of these questions.
Hey, good, because I wanted to talk about something he talks about in there.
Chloe.
Schloey.
Just the best. We do have Jonathan Drouin from practice today that we'll play for you now. I think we're ready for it. Oh, 1 second. I'm being told.
1 second.
They're in my ear saying 1 second, Megan.
Toss to commercial.
Yeah. Jared told us the other night that you were the one who called on Brock Nelson to go out there in the shootout. How dialed into all that kind of stuff are you?
Yeah, I watched probably a little too much hockey. But yeah, no, I've seen, obviously I played with Montembeault for years, so, and I've seen Nelly score when I played on the halves with that move, so kind of knew Montembeault had trouble with that little route he does with the left side coming back in. Yeah, kind of Nelly picked a 5-0 in the little glove. I don't know which sort he's going to pick, and he picked the right one.
Yeah, that right there where he said he gives him trouble by swinging wide left and then coming back in. I knew that would give Montembeault. It was that part right there that when it's like, geez Louise, like, and again, to know the and again, it's always hard because I'm sure he's talking about it from Brock's perspective, left to right, but it's just funny, that, I knew that Montembeault having to shuffle from his right to his left and tracking, I knew that would give him, that was the part to me where I was just like, oh my gosh, it's not like, oh, I know Montembeault's not good if you go backhand forward. Like, no, like the mechanics of it.
Right. It's so future coach of Jonathan Drouin.
Yes.
What he also talked about in the interview was getting to know Gabriel Landeskog as a leader because, that relationship looks a little bit different for players like Drouin who came in post-Cup era, and Landy has been around the team. He's been the captain of this team, but I imagine it's different not having had the chance to go to battle together on the ice in games, but he used the word presence. That Landeskog is such a presence. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what it's meant having Landy now in his 4th skate with the team.
4th straight skate, like 4 consecutive skates.
Yes, right? Because it's not like it's back-to-back days per se, but it's been consistent. And that's already different from anything we've seen in his recovery before. I have to imagine that some of that presence, just being around the room, being around the guys, is also adding to some of the success that they're having.
The last 4 times we've seen the team on the ice for the entirety of the practice, Gabe Landeskog has been out there with them. We've seen him in the locker room a few times. I had a couple good just chats with him on the road, just, kind of him being around.
Any more jokes?
No, nothing else. Well, we were in Toronto and they have a weird spot for the elevator. It's like, if you don't know that it's the elevator to take you up, you'll walk right past it. Like it's right next to a freight elevator and a loading dock. And there's just like a lot going on. It's like, oh yeah, that elevator right there is what takes you up. And it's like, what the fuck? So I was just kind of wandering around trying to figure out where to go. And Gabe stops me and he's like, hey, how's it going? What's going on? How are things? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, what are you up to? Or what are you doing? I said, well, right now I'm just technically wandering around this building because I'm trying to find the elevator. And he laughs. He goes, wish I could help you. Don't know where to go. And I was like, oh, I thought this was going to end with like it's right over there. But he was like, nope, don't know.
That's crazy.
I was like, all right.
I feel like I guess I know he spends a lot of time in Toronto, but I don't know that he specifically.
This was my thought too, as I was gearing up I was like, oh, I don't know where the elevator is.
But you probably do.
Exactly. And he was like, I don't know where it is either. And I was like, oh, all right, well, I got to get up there. Like the game's getting ready to start, so I'm going to go.
That's so funny.
But, the last 4 times the Avs have been on the ice, he's been out there and he stayed out on the ice for the entirety of the practice. And to your point about that being different from what we've seen, him staying on the ice for an entire practice was something that we had not seen up until a week ago.
That was already huge.
Right. That he took part in all the drills and all that. We've now seen him do that. We've seen him stay on the ice with the healthy scratches. After morning skate in Montreal, go through the same progressions that Logan O'Connor and Parker Kelly went through with Toby Peterson. Tomorrow's the test for me. I was saying this before the show started. It's not the end-all be-all test, but if Gabe Landeskog takes the ice tomorrow for morning skate and goes through the entire skate with the group, that will be 5 consecutive skates with the last 2 coming on consecutive days. That is a real step forward. Now, we have to see what happens after that, right? Not only him being on the ice, but
building blocks.
Does he, how does he recover? If he goes on the ice tomorrow and then is back at practice, let's say 2 days later, that's when you are getting into, okay, this guy's making a real push to be available come the start of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because that's, going back to the reports that we heard from Emily Kaplan and Frank Saravelli of, it wasn't the most recent issue wasn't on ice. How was the knee feeling?
Right.
It was that night and the next day and the swelling and the pain and the recovery of it all. If he's getting to a point where he can recover and get back on the ice the next day, then you are talking about the next steps of being, how much can we simulate game-like circumstances where guys are leaning on you and, you're battling in front with Keaton Middleton. He's the biggest guy that I could, think of off the top of my head right now. And you're fine battling in front like that and you're digging pucks out of the corner. Like, that's kind of the next step that you go to if we see him on the ice tomorrow and things go well.
It's huge. And I know there's a lot of skepticism around what this return could look like, if it's for real this time, but we're the closest to it being a reality than we ever have been. And it is a matter of building blocks and steps. It's not something where we see one thing and we can say with certainty now that he'll be back. It unfortunately does have to be these gradual progressions, but they're important along the way. He still has to take that next gradual progression forward.
Well, because the Landeskog conversation to me isn't anymore about, can he play in one more NHL game? Like, I think if Gabe Landeskog wanted to jump into the lineup tomorrow and take all the cap stuff out of it, like if Gabe Landeskog wanted to play tomorrow, I'd be willing to bet Gabe Landeskog could give you 8 to 10 minutes tomorrow. It's everything that comes after that. That is where we are at with the conversation with Gabe Landeskog. It's not about, can he come back and play another game? Can he make it back to the NHL? It's, can he stay there?
Right.
And can he be an effective enough player to the point that he feels comfortable in the lineup on the third or fourth line? Like that's just where we're at. So like you said, it's, I would probably feel comfortable saying right now, based on what I know, based on what I've seen, Gabe Landeskog could play against the Detroit Red Wings tomorrow.
You heard it here first,
folks.
Yeah. Gabriel Landeskog.
Yeah, the defenseman, as Megan reported earlier. Yeah,
tomorrow.
No, but
Detroit.
like he is Gabe Landeskog feeling well enough right now today to play tomorrow? I'd be willing to bet he is. But it's so important to go through the progressions, as you were saying, of small steps, small bites, because Gabe Landeskog's not just trying to get back in a game.
I respect that so much.
He's trying to resume his career.
The amount of restraint and discipline to recognize that taking this with precaution and going through the slow moving progressions of it all, experiencing small setbacks and not pushing it further, stopping, he was off the ice for a little bit at the start of the year before getting back on. I can't imagine, when all you've known is hockey, how hard it is to make that call when you need to take that break, because you might feel close on the doorstep of being able to play in a single game. But when the goal is greater than the single game and you want to resume a career, you have to have that discipline. And I respect that so much about him throughout this whole process. Even the maturity it took to try all the options that were available to him at first and then choose the nuclear one that was so uncertain and unknown, and to dive into that, it's taken so much courage too. I think I like that A Clean Sheet, this Gabe Landeskog story, exists to tell that part of the story, because it has to be so inspiring for other people out there, other athletes, and honestly just the general public to hear his story. Well,
to go through everything that he's gone through and still be going is unbelievable. All right, let's start to wind things down a little bit here. I want to talk about the Pot of Gold game that you went to, and sounds like we'll have some content coming out from that, so we don't have to get too much into the night itself and all that. But the Colorado Eagles, like, they are, I don't know if on the rise is the right way to put it, but they're rising in the standings in the American League. And I mean, they've just felt like they've had a really fun group all season long that is driving some real results up in Loveland.
This feels like a team that is built to last. It feels built for a strong playoff run. This has been a team that I've always loved, the on-ice product. I felt that it's competitive, and there is something different about this year. It has restored a lot of the goal scoring to the top of the lineup. Every year with turnover in the American League, that can be a little hard to do. And in bringing back players like Jason Megna and Jacob McDonald, who have roots here, I think it kind of changes that, because it's not just that they provide the goal scoring, they also provide important pieces of culture. And I think that's been really fun for the team to rally around, I should say. And it's familiar to a lot of them too. And it helps to instill this identity that I think we're seeing brought to life in the results. So they sit atop the Pacific, and they have players having career years that are experienced veteran players like Jacob McDonald, who is chasing an all-time AHL record for goals scored by a defenseman. But Chris Wagner, another player that is an experienced vet in this league, but is also on pace to surpass his own career highs. And I think that is an important storyline within the season of the Eagles, that players are coming here, no matter what year into playing hockey they are, they're experiencing this renaissance of hockey. And Aaron Schneekloth said it's something to do with the belief in that room, which is funny. And everything that we're talking about, it's a belief in each other, because, Foodie's had a tough go of things too. He experienced injury at the start of this year, so his numbers don't jump off the page, but he solidified a spot on that top line, playing with Jason Megna, getting reps with Matthew Phillips, another player that they brought in to be a points producer, and he's been that on a nightly basis for them. And so it's not just the top of the lineup, though. In the goals that I'm even seeing recently for them in this last stretch of games, they're battling to get these goals. They're forcing turnovers because they're competing so hard that they're suffocating other teams. And it's lines 1 through 4 that's battling for pucks, coming up with them and creating opportunities from it. They're great. Both special teams. I don't think there's been an Eagles team in recent years that has been inside the top 10 conversation for both power play and penalty kill on the whole of the league. The PK has been dominant all year, and defensively, this is a team that has allowed some of the fewest shot attempts against around the league. It's been a top number in that metric, but they're also one of the top goal scoring, like goal per game teams, because they have this high octane offense. So they're solid defensively, great on the kill. They're also converting like crazy on the power play. And then the 5v5 scoring is there because they just battle so hard. And I think that's, in talking about the Avs being really well-balanced, lines 1 through 4, I feel that way about the Eagles. I think that Jacob McDonald heading up the D group has been extremely helpful, but Callie Rosen, a player that has joined them, so responsible, a huge piece of their penalty kill. Wyatt Ahmet, a player that they just extended, great stay-at-home defenseman who reminds me of Ryan Lindgren in that warrior sense. He will always battle for his team. There's just so many things that I like about them, and they've had to overcome their own issues with injury. And so they've had a rotating cast of characters, right? Like, they've been without a Steinberg. They've been without a Sean Behrens, who was supposed to make his pro debut this year. And Poland's been out of the lineup at points, another important player in their depth. Prishepov out of the lineup because of, little minor things, but these are exciting prospects that we've wanted to see play this year. And when they've been in games, they've grown. Ivan, he looks more and more like a polished player in that league. And that's a player I continue to be excited about that can help the Avs one day. And then there's a Taylor McCarr somewhere in the future that I just see being such a cultural and stylistic fit. In talking about how much this team is battling, I see the speed of which McCarr plays with Taylor. I feel like I have to say very specifically, being such a great fit. There's so much excitement around what the Eagles have become, right? Like, the addition of High Note has improved the power play. Branham has locked down that penalty kill, and Schneekloth heading it all up from the top. He's such a disciplined coach. He expects a lot of his players. In talking like the Avs, they're pretty bought into what the Eagles are trying to do.
Well, so there's two things. Do you want the cynical / funny thing first, or do you want me to continue building on the positivity that you just said first?
Do the cynical so we can round it out with the positive.
You just listed more than 10 individual players saying like what great things they're doing. You did not name Oscar Olausen.
You're allowed to, you're allowed to say that one.
And that's just, he's got 10 goals on the season. But that is just one that like, I just continue to wait. Like he's going to have the Burakovsky thing. He can do that. And I just don't know if he can, but doesn't matter. They're finding ways to win.
Yes.
Otherwise. And I really do just think that you can't overlook something that we have heard them talk about, from Jared Bednar to Chris McFarland to Aaron Schneekloth to Brian Wilsey. You can't fake the authenticity of the culture. And it starts at the NHL level, but they so wholeheartedly believe in this needs to trickle all the way down. So that when we are calling up players, not only are they familiar stylistically and systematically, they understand what the expectations of this organization are. And they understand the level of commitment and the work that needs to be put in. And I think that, like you said, it's not a coincidence that we're seeing a lot of the same kind of like through lines behind the scenes with the Avs as we're seeing with the Eagles. To me, that's not a coincidence.
No, and we've drawn these parallels before, but it just feels like these teams are closer to being the same thing than ever before. It's down to what is expected of the players, being a solid defensive team, but being opportunistic and hungry to create chances. That's how they have some of the second most shorthanded goals in the league right now, is because they also have found this life as an aggressive penalty killing team that will make you pay for any small mistake that you make on the opposite team's man advantage, right? Yeah. They are making teams pay for small mistakes and committing fewer and fewer of their own. And that sounds so much like a Jared Bednar team. And I even look at why Jared Bednar liked Steinberg so much in the brief showing. And a lot of it's who Steinberg is as a player, but also you add that Eagles polish, and these players are more ready-made to fit into an Avs lineup because of what the Eagles are doing.
Matthew Steinberg still has to serve his 2-game suspension.
So he's been skating, but he had a weird lower body injury that kept him out pretty long term. So I don't know where or how that stands at this point.
I feel like if you can, you call him up next year and just let him serve it.
Let
and
him
then
just get it through. The timing of the injury was very unfortunate.
Yeah. Last thing, and then we're going to get out of here. You mentioned Taylor McCarr. I do just wonder, they do win the Hockey East Championship. I wonder how much, not only being a McCarr and seeing the work ethic that Cale puts in, but Cale and Logan O'Connor are really close. I do wonder how much a guy like Taylor McCarr is picking the brain of a guy like OC. And I see Taylor being Logan O'Connor for the Eagles next year.
I do too. And his size is going to make him an intriguing power forward in ways like, I think the way Logan O'Connor plays, he outshines using his work. I think that Taylor McCarr is also going to work very hard, but I think he's going to be more of a physical threat in addition to his speed, because of how big he is. And that's something he's being encouraged to do, in his final year of college here. But he's also tapped into teammates of Cale to learn more about how to become a pro and take care of himself like one, down to diet, taking care of himself away from the rink. And I think the results we saw this year at Maine are born from having that resource in Cale Makar and his teammates and what they do at the pro level. So I think that he's got an intriguing path to the pros that, you look at his draft status and maybe didn't think much of him, but the resources he has and how he has used them to become better, that takes a mature player to have all of that at his disposal and to actually grow. That's what makes Taylor McCarr a very interesting prospect.
Yeah, I want to talk more about Taylor, maybe even later this week. But we're pushing an hour 10, so we're going to jump out of here for today. That's going to do it. A lot to get caught up on today, but we got there. And Pucks and Prosecco tomorrow, right? Yes, new Pucks and Prosecco tomorrow. Then we'll be back on Friday. We'll also have all of our game day coverage coming your guys' way tomorrow, as well as the Avs take on the Detroit Red Wings. She's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. Chloe Thiel back there behind the glass. Maybe the MVP of the show today.
Yeah.
Pulls the clip under the wire. So we appreciate it. That's going to do it for today. Guerrilla Sports Off Ice, brought to you by our good friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Thanks so much. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.